Welcome, my name is Kelly.
And I'm Nathan.
And this is Fanimated, an animation fan podcast where we get a chance to geek out about our favorite animated media. Today, we are talking about one of my top 10 anime, Mob Psycho 100. And...
Top 10?
Yeah, it's easily top 10.
Monumental episode.
I hate to tell you, Nathan, that on my current rankings, it is one above Jujutsu Kaisen on my top 10 list, so...
What? Oh, how dare you?
It's the truth. For now, we'll see. Jujutsu Kaisen Zero, the movie, might bump it up.
What a nonsense naming structure. But what else could we ask for from anime?
Exactly. And of course, always talking about our favorite shows and everything on the show. So I'm really excited to be talking about Mob Psycho 100. It aired in 2016, I believe. The manga or webcomic is written by the same author as One Punch Man, and it shows. And although personally, have you watched One Punch Man?
I've watched like the first season or two. It's all right.
Yeah, I've watched like a few episodes of One Punch Man, but it just didn't click with me in the same way. But I know a lot of people really love that one as well. So it definitely follows a lot of the same themes, or at least the same like basis of like the protagonist being super OP.
Sure, in that idea of it, but where One Punch Man is entirely satire, where it is entirely making fun of the action anime genre, Mob Psycho is clearly a comedy and
Yes.
not as really worried about its action or its characters all the time. It just is trying to be funny constantly.
Yes. And in my view, it succeeds at being hilarious.
I can see how you like it, Kelly.
Just me? All right, I'll take it. I personally think this show is hilarious. Like, it's overly dramatic, like, camera angles and posing and, like, just insane, weird, random art styles at just ridiculous moments. It's like that part of it just is so cool and so fun to me. And it's part of why I really, really like it. But you're right. It is a comedy, first and foremost, like comedy, shonen, action. And as we go on with describing this show, just spoiler alert. If you haven't seen it, there are 2 seasons. It's a pretty quick watch, I'd say. And we'll be talking about all of the characters and the plot and everything. So this is your official spoiler warning if you don't want to get spoiled. But first off, I just want to say, like, even though this came out in 2016, I did not watch it when it was coming out. I missed this bandwagon somehow, and I actually watched it, I don't even know when, but pretty recently, in the past couple years, I think, and I just binge watched the whole thing, and I was like, I love this show. I love it. So, definitely, that was kind of my interaction with it. And then honestly, rewatching it for the podcast here was my only time rewatching it. So I've only seen it twice, but I'm still like, this is one of my favorites. Absolutely. So, and Nathan, I convinced you to watch it.
Yes, to be on the podcast. So I've only watched it once in the last month. I think when you had originally watched it, you might have brought it up as of what you watching and told me that I should watch it, and I watched maybe like the first 1 or 2 episodes and just really wasn't feeling it, and so I had stopped. And so then we were like, you gotta actually watch the show. It's like, all right, Kelly, I'll keep doing it. Glad I did, though.
You did. I hope it wasn't just torturous for you. I hope you had a little bit of fun.
I don't know when we're gonna talk about Synopsis here, but like, they definitely have slow starts to these seasons. Like, it starts off really, really slow, and then it just runs downhill for the second half of both seasons.
Fair, definitely.
And so there's definitely like, you can kind of toss out the first 1, 2, 3 episodes of each season, as in they aren't going to really contribute to anything.
Ah, ah,
And
I object.
all right, all right, Judge Kelly.
Yes. See, episode 1 of season 2 is one of my favorite episodes because no. Mob is like learning to relate to other people and like just defining himself and who he is in relation with other people. And episode 1 of season 2 is like one of the best episodes. And yes, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. So basic synopsis maybe might be helpful. The basic synopsis is that our middle school protagonist, Mob, real name Shigeo, Mob is his nickname that no one actually calls him Mob, but that's fine. So Shigeo is a middle school student who is definitely like shy and, isn't super confident. And he has these amazing psychic powers that are triggered by his emotions. So, as his emotions build up, he will get to a certain like percentage, and when he gets to like 100%, like his emotions are so full, he will basically explode and be super ultra powerful. And because his, powers are triggered by his emotions, he really tries to keep his emotions like down and like be super monotone in emotion most of the time. And he has a master, Regan Arataka, who is the Grunkle Stan of this universe, just a complete con artist, is just like pretending to be a psychic, has this business where he's like performing exorcisms and connecting with the spirits and all of that. And really, Mob is the one doing all the work, and Regan just takes advantage of him in a lot of ways. And it's them two like going on their adventures. Throughout the story, we meet other espers, other psychic users, and they, of course, being a shonen action anime, they have to like save the world and all of that. So that's like basic synopsis. Lots of fun, crazy adventures. A lot of it is pretty episodic. It doesn't necessarily correlate to like a larger arc until, like you said, the ending of the seasons. Then will be like, an actual longer arc. But a lot of it is just these characters going on a goofy adventure and having fun.
Yes, and I believe this is a similar synopsis you gave me during What You Watched in order to watch this, and I'm going to call you out on this, is that is a horrible synopsis of this show.
What? Okay.
The parts where Reagan is a con artist and they're doing these odd jobs are the least important part of this show, and honestly, my least favorite part of this show in the entirety. When Reagan is being a con artist, I think it's horrible. It's annoying. Him taking advantage is bad. He's like clearly not being like the good mentor he should be. This show is about a young boy finding his purpose in life when he is isolated due to his special powers and abilities. And it is a coming of age story where Mob has been faced with people like him that have taken different paths and having to try and both learn from them and teach them that they are not special because of their psychic powers, but because they are not special, that does not mean that they are not important. And that is what this show is about.
That is wonderful. And we can both be right. But remember, who was the first person who said you're not special because of your abilities? It was Regan. Regan was telling Mom when he was a little kid.
I want to disassociate Reagan into two aspects. There was Reagan the con artist, and then there was Reagan the anti-hero. The one that is like the very do what I say, not what I do type person. the one who's like
Mm-hmm.
coming up and punching bad guys in the face at the end of all the chapters. I like that Reagan. That Reagan is
Yes.
great. The Reagan that is like dumping salt on everybody and getting mob and calling mob all the time is not good, and I don't like him.
Okay, all right. Yep, I agree. He's not great, but it's like, again, that other side of him, I think, makes up for him being a little sketch.
He's a lot of sketch.
uh, and I feel like overall, though, he's not ever gonna like. He never like actually harms people, and he's just down a wayward path. But ultimately, just like Mob says, he's a good person, a genuinely good person. And I really like their relationship, Mob and Reagan, especially season 2. There's a fantastic couple of episodes just about Reagan, and he was a total horrible person to Mob at one point, and Reagan's on his own. But Mob comes and basically saves him out of a horrible press conference and is like, oh, yeah, well, I've always known you've, been a con artist, but I know you're a good person, and that's what matters. And, like, without Reagan, Mob, I don't think would have been able to reach the level of emotional maturity that he reaches by the end.
Yeah. But them taking advantage in their little episodic adventures isn't what leads them to that. And that's why I
Uh,
still say that the first couple of episodes are boring, because you don't understand how they were ever important until you actually get to the end. And so it's very hard to be like, this is what it's about. He he he.
mm, okay, all right. But like I kind of like stories like that you maybe don't see all the pieces fit together until the end, if that's what you're saying, because
Right.
I think that's far more interesting and adds a layer to things rather than, you know, the opposite being true. Like you think everything is connected and part of something, at the end it doesn't hold up, for example.
Sure, sure. But like it's you don't know about that when you're watching the first three and like this is kind of boring. Like why are they fighting motorcycles in a tunnel? Like go get to some real action, please.
They have to establish everything at the beginning of season 1, and I mean, like you said, this is first and foremost a comedy. So
Hmm.
they're having fun and making jokes. There's a lot, yeah. So there's a lot going on in the show. I will say too that like it is a comedy, but I like that it has a lot of those deeper moments just about human emotion and relation to people. It has a lot of it actually has like some sort of moral standing, regardless of one of the main characters being a con artist. So I love Mob. I love the show because of Mob, because he really does mature so much over the series. And starting off, like I said, he's your typical like wimpy, like not confident kind of kid, and then he first off makes the great decision to join the body improvement club, which is hilarious because he's like, yeah, I want to improve myself, because I mean he has psychic powers. He has like basically unlimited strength, but he's like, no, I want to actually get better, improve myself, right? And that's what he does throughout the series in different ways. And he feels more confident with other people. He gains friends. He like I again, going back to season 2 episode 1 of my favorite episodes, because a girl is in his class is dared to like ask him out, and like he walks her home a whole bunch, and then she's like, yeah, no, I just did that as a dare, whatever. And it's kind of depressing, but like she had shared some really personal stuff with him about like she's writing this story and all that stuff. When she's with her friends, they like laugh at her, make fun of her and stuff, and then Mob like sticks up for her, and is like, you can't do that, like this is like something really important to her. And she like is like, oh yeah, actually I can stick up for what I enjoy doing. I'm going to stick up for who I am and not just pretend to be, whoever my friends want me to be. And so it's things like that that I love about this show. It's those little relationship moments and just those little human emotional moments throughout this very comedic show, which I just love. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. Those are some of the best parts. Um, my favorite episode is also a part like that. If we're going favorite episodes right
For
away,
sure.
I like episode 5 of season 1. So this is the big fight with Teru.
Yes.
So this is when I finally figured out, oh, this is what this show is about. This renegade con artist and middle school child double cop show is not what this show is about at all. It is about Mob and his morals and him trying to find what he wants to be in his purpose. And so in within that episode, essentially a rival school, I don't even remember what the school is like picking a fight with the bad kids from mob school, and the whole body improvement club gets wrangled into it because they're all like big beefy boys, but they're all very like non-violent. And so they end up throwing down, and it's Mob ends up running into another psychic at this other school, and Mob's is like literally never met another psychic other than Reagan, who's a fake psychic. And so Mob is coming to meet this other person who is just like him for the first time, really. Like it is the little first time in Mob's entire life who has met someone who is actually like him, even though he thinks Reagan is like him, but this person's actually like him. And he sees that like this person is an absolute terror. He's using his power to control this like uh, gang of middle schoolers and like be the kingpin, and is just like throwing around his weight and his power and just like beating up all these kids. And so Mob is set in front of this figure, and instead of being like a test of power like most action animes would do, of like yelling and screaming at each other until someone goes super saiyan, Mob goes, no, you're wrong, you shouldn't be using your powers on people. And he continually repeats that of like, this is what Master Reagan told me, you should never use your psychic powers on someone. And like, I like that Reagan, not other Reagans.
Yes.
And so throughout the whole episode, Mob is just getting trashed in this fight, and it's super action, and everything's exploding, and like they're destroying the entire school. And uh Teru like eventually like knocks Mob unconscious, and that is when Mob finally goes 100%. I think for the first time in the whole series, and you finally get to see like, oh, this is what it was building up to. This was the anticipation. We had to wait 5 episodes for this, and just like atomic bomb explodes the entire school, chops off Teru's hair, and so that he's bald, and like Teru just like finally understands that like this person is way, way, way more powerful than me. I need to meet who this master is that is like telling him not to do and not hurt people, because he'll be able to train me to be as powerful as Mob. He'll eventually learn that's not the case, but it's like, oh no, this is actually a show about like ideals and about purpose and about these people that seem isolated and how they connect to each other. And that's when I started being like, oh, I'm gonna finish this. I'm gonna keep watching this. I'm not gonna just like drag myself through this to be on another podcast with Kelly. It's like, oh no, I get it. I get why they made this
Mhm.
show. There's like the what the show is about, and then there's like the why the show is about. And that was like the sudden realization of like why the show exists. So if you are gonna watch this show, watch at least until the 5th episode, which is hard to like tell people, oh, it gets good around episode 5, but it is only 26 episodes, and so it's not too far into actual seasons.
Yeah, we're not telling you to watch One Piece and don't worry, it gets better on season 3 or something. Like, just 5 episodes. But you're right. Yeah, that's exactly why I love the show even more than just the fun comedy. And throughout the show, Mob is able to prove to other people that, like you said at the beginning, and in this example, like, you aren't as special as you thought, but you still matter, because Teru thinks he's the most powerful creature on the planet, and so is terrorizing people, and he's knocked down a million pegs by Mob, and he's like, oh, I see now, like, I really am just a normal human. That's it. That's the show. Everyone is a normal human. It's speaking on humanity with people who are more than human. Season 2 as well, at the end of season 2, he has a similar exchange with another very, even more powerful Esper, and is able to show, that it you can't just rely on a talent like that. And Reagan says, like, oh, these are just another talent like any other talent someone might have, or trait, or skill, and it doesn't make you better than anyone else. You're still human. And Mob continues to stand for nonviolence, and fights on that within himself as well, and everything that goes on with that. So it's just, there's so many layers, there's so many things going on in this show. So I agree. Episode 5 really brings it to the next level, the deeper level that it's meaning to get to. And if the humor isn't your jam, I'm pretty sure the rest of that would be.
Just talking about the humor for a second, we've talked about the comedy and different things in anime, and how sometimes as a Western audience, we're definitely like missing jokes and we're missing things. And I watched the whole thing subtitled, so it was in Japanese. So, sometimes you miss inflections and whatnot. But this show, its comedy is so much more. I think when we talked about Jujutsu Kaisen, we compared it to Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. It is also by Studio Bones, and so they have the same comedy writing of that it is visual comedy. And so it is, like Kelly mentioned on the top of the episode, there is just a bunch of like different mass medium that suddenly changes, or you get the big like dong, like sound effects thing as someone like suddenly realizes that everything's going, or like everything will suddenly be like grayscale and very drastic, and like that's the comedy. It's not like what they said or like what is happening. It is the reaction and the actual visualization of it, which I'm an on. I like the Jujutsu Kaisen of like the comedy is the people's actions and what they're saying and like what is happening and going on. And so there isn't as much of that in Mob Psycho that at least I am picking up on. And so it's definitely visual comedy, but the visuals in this show are so psychedelically blasting into the back of your skull constantly that honestly the comedy is almost overwhelming. Of just a sudden constant like flashing and going off, or like even the action sequences are just like melting your eyes.
It's so good. It is so good. It's so good. Like, immediately after starting the first episode again, I was like, yes, I love this show, because like the first scene is just Reagan talking to a couple of clients, and it's the dynamic camera angles and the, crazy, like super fluid expressions. Like that, for me, that's comedy gold. It's great. And then beyond that, like everything they do, and then in like battles and everything is just like amazing. I talk a lot about good animation, but I'm just like, it's more than just like, oh, this is well animated. This is like well designed. It's like we're expanding, being really imaginative in how to make this work, because they're psychics. They can do whatever they want visually to to show what's happening, right? And so they change complete art style sometimes, which again is part of the comedy, but also just part of the really cool animation. And I'm sure is part of like the original content. But it's animated so well. And I don't know, that's the way I can describe it, is like, not only is it well animated, but it's, it just goes beyond in imagining the crazy 3D spaces that they can be in, because like not to jump too far into other things, but one of my favorite fights is against this evil spirit, and they're basically in like a mindscape where anything can be reality, and it's stunning. It's crazy. It's so cool. And everything can be anywhere, and they're going around buildings that are floating. Like, that's what's so cool about this show is they really utilize that, and it's always executed really well.
Yeah, it's all animation, but it almost feels like mixed media. Like it changes so drastically and suddenly that you're like, this is almost beyond a different art style. It's like a different, you've said design, but it's like a different approach to even creating animation suddenly.
Absolutely. No, I agree. It's phenomenal. It's an experience. It's an experience watching this animation. So we've talked a lot about a lot of different things and characters and everything. But there are, a few other characters we didn't mention. Obviously, we have Shigeo and Regan, our two protagonists. And they are often followed by, to round out their trio, a spirit um, who tags along and is, I don't know,
What do you not know?
funny, maybe?
I think he is the funniest person in the entire show.
Okay, Dimple is all yours.
Dimple. Dimple is looking to become a god. But he is the lowliest evil spirit that is so low level that everyone is almost ignoring him at most of the time. But
Yes.
he's just like a little glowing green orb wisp, and he has big red clown cheeks. And when he possesses people, they also get the clown cheeks, which I'm like, design, aesthetic, amazing. Um, and so he originally was like trying to start a cult that like was convinced by like laughing to rule the world. It was very strange, but Mob is so immune to emotions that he like essentially destroyed the cult by not thinking they were funny. um which is just a weird, that's one of the first like weird episodes where you're just like, what is even this show? Like you got to get past that one. But he
Or you're going to thoroughly enjoy it and laugh out loud like I do every time.
I think that's almost one of the weirdest episodes.
I think it's hilarious. I think that episode's great.
Right, but then essentially Dimple gets like dragged along throughout the rest of the entire narrative, and he's like the actual only adult in any of these scenarios a lot of the time, where he's like, what are you guys doing? This is insane. Like, stop. This is crazy. And he's like trying to like tag along with Mob. Like everyone's just trying to tag along with Mob. And so he has this whole like back and forth with Reagan where they're both like kind of trying to take advantage of Mob, but are telling each other off about it the whole time.
Yeah.
Um, which is great. I don't know. And he pushes like Ritsu forward in his psychic abilities, and like he's the Deus Ex Machina a lot of time. And so
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think he's good, and I like his amount of chaos that he brings. If there isn't already
Yes.
enough chaos with all the psychics.
Oh, definitely, definitely. He brings a different kind of chaos for sure. Um, and it's fun because with all these characters, but especially with Dimple, I feel like Mob can just be so oblivious to his own power sometimes, or like doesn't want to think about it. But it's like he just treats Dimple as like this little friend who's around, and Dimple is like, I'm going to, you know, try to take over you and all of that, and wants to use his power. But again, even with spirits, and there's this question Mob has throughout the series as well, as he starts to think like, well, aren't spirits, can't we treat them like humans too? And so Mob does. Mob treats Dimple like a human and treats and respects him, which in turn, Dimple, uh, ends up respecting Mob as well, and they do all form like this great little psychic trio of like exorcists. So it's great. Another character I really love is Mob's younger brother, Ritsu.
Yes.
I think those are some of my favorite parts of the show when, we get to learn more about Ritsu. Growing up with Mob, like, here's Ritsu, he doesn't have any power. Ritsu was actually hurt by one of Mob's, outbursts at one point, and that really, really kind of shattered, Ritsu's childhood. So he felt like he always had to make sure Mob was happy, and was just nervous that at any time, like, Mob could, lose control again. And in the same way, Mob, that's what makes Mob completely fear his own abilities, because he has hurt his brother in the past, and he has to overcome that as well. And eventually Ritsu does gain his psychic abilities. And so then they get to go, like, beat up bad guys together. Well, bad spirits, because they don't fight other people. Or they try not
Ritsu
to.
does. Really, it's only Mob who tries to not fight people. Going back a step though, I really liked, and it's right around the same of that fifth episode of when Ritsu starts getting his powers in episodes like 6, 7, 8. When it really cemented in my mind that this show is all about people finding their own purposes, because the two brothers are essentially like dichotomies of each other, where Mob has incredible psychic power but is like so jealous of Ritsu for essentially excelling in class and like having friends and like being his ideal of normal, and was like constantly trying to uh become Ritsu, while Ritsu is secretly like doing all of this like very like destructive like emotional manipulation and like trying to unlock his psychic powers so that he can be like Mob, so he doesn't have to live in fear, and he can have the power that he thinks Mob takes for granted, and be so like live the life that Mob isn't living, because like Ritsu is like imagining
Mm.
himself as like a superhero almost. So they're both jealous of each other's lives and are trying to emulate and find wanting what the other has, um and thinking that like the other person has it all figured out, when really neither of them have anything figured out. And so through Ritsu unlocking his powers and like getting mistaken for Mob and getting captured and like finding out that like his powers don't solve everything, and like he'll never be as powerful as Mob, but like that's okay because Mob still like really respects him and is like working so hard to try and like protect Ritsu, and like it is so pure, but also it's like so fundamental to the storytelling that's going on. That's what the show is about, is those brothers.
It is. It is. It's about, again, it's about, I like what you say about purpose, They're just people trying to find their purpose, their place in the world. Even like the side characters, right? Like they go and fight all these bad guys at Claw's 7th Division, and then they all end up like trying to, find their place in the world too. And with Ritsu and Mob, like they both affect each other so much. Like it's such a fundamental part of, especially, of each other's character development. And one of my favorite Ritsu and Mob moments is right at the end when Mob is fighting the big boss, and he throughout the show he's been so concerned about going Super Saiyan, going crazy, and he's like, will there ever be anyone there who can stop me if I do decide somehow that I need to take someone's life or something. And Mob reaches that point. He gets there. He is like knee deep in this fight against Suzuki, and like, oh my goodness, absolutely going insane. And it just takes one look from Ritsu, and that's what's able to pull him out of it and still resolve things. But he doesn't like let that like bloodlust take over him, basically.
I thought you were going to talk about the spoons because I think the spoons are more important.
Okay, tell us about the spoons, Nathan.
So throughout the entire show, there's a running gag that all of the psychics end up bending spoons because that's like the magician's gag of a psychic bending a spoon with his mind. And so they use it when they're just eating dinner together as a family. Is that Mob's spoon always ends up bending and he ends up spilling like whatever dish they're eating all over the ground. And then Ritsu would always be giving Mob his spoon, and so it was like, oh, don't get upset, Mom, like protecting him. And so eventually then at the very end when they both have their psychic powers, he goes, oh, it's all right, and he takes the spoon and he bends it back into place with his mind and hands it back to Mob because they're finally able, they still do the same thing and look out for each other, but they are in so much like equal terms at that point. That's my favorite Ritsu and Mob moment.
That's a pretty great Ritsu and Mob moment. Man, these brothers, I can't get enough of them, honestly. And we mentioned Teru. He's another Esper, of course, and the first one that Mob meets. He is I don't know, like he starts out as just the bully, using his powers for just to be the head honcho of the school and like beating people up. But because of Mob, he changes and he kind of turns into, I think, probably one of the more charismatic and like more of a leader. Like he definitely is able to, rally everyone up to like get things
Right.
done
But he
in a
was
lot of
always a
ways.
leader and he was always charismatic.
It's
He was
true.
just using his mob of angry goons for bad because he thought he was the main character and that he was the most powerful. And when he wasn't, and he was like, oh, I'm actually a side character, I can still actually be a leader and I can still find my purpose in what I need to do to help this group of misfits take down the claw at the end of the evil organization. I just like Taro because of the big hair. Essentially,
His giant wig.
in Mob's first fight, he ends up kind of shaving Taro bald with his powers. Like they're in like a science lab, and some of like the sharp equipment or something sort of like shaves his hair off, and then that's when Taro like realizes that he needs to run away. And then he comes back with like a 2 foot tall wig, and it's just like a giant top hat of hair, and everyone is just like, "Man, look at that guy's hair! Wow, what is he doing?" Or he's like trying to like peek around corners, and his hair is sticking out. Like it's a running gag for like up until the very end, where then his wig gets chopped off again in a fight, but it goes back to his normal hair. I think that's the funniest joke in the entire show.
Is the wig. It's so good. No, but Teru is great. And that kind of rounds out our main gang. And this is the part in the show where I complain about the fact that there are no main female characters, and that there are no real female espers, except for one girl who can kind of tell where people are in a building.
Well, then there's the people in Claw as well, but
That's
they're
true.
barely even named characters. And then there's Tsuboimi, the in quotes love interest, who says
Uh huh.
4 lines.
4 lines, and it's just the girl Mom pines after without actually talking to.
She is so unimportant. But like, what other end goal are you going to give a middle schooler in this anime? you couldn't be like, oh no, he is trying to find his greater purpose in life of doing good and saving people. No, he's doing everything so that he has the confidence to talk to a girl.
Uh-huh, that's the frustration. Um Granted, even Mob says like, "Oh yeah, I started the body improvement club cuz of Tsubomi." But now that's not true. Like, he does just want to improve himself. But he still has a crush on Tsubomi. Like, and she doesn't seem like that nice of a person anyway. um, I just, I'm not a fan of, regardless whether it's female or male, having like a love interest as the main goal slash trophy, I guess. Like, the main goal is fine. Don't get me wrong. I love shoujo anime, but that's usually a little deeper than just I want this unattainable, unreachable relationship goal that like especially when they don't even talk to the person. And I know that's Mom's whole thing is he's not confident, but it's just so overdone. We've seen it a million times, and it's honestly kind of just it feels a little, it feels disrespectful. So there it is,
So
Tsubomi.
we can at least be glad that she plays such a minor role that it's almost non-important to
Yes.
what is actually going on.
Yeah, by the end no one cares.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's another. This is 2 weeks in a row, actually, that I'm talking about this exact same problem. But if there was at least one female character who was using psychic abilities and was actually part of the plot in a major way, that would have been great. That would have been, hopefully not too much to ask. But even like Teru or Ritsu could have been female. It wouldn't have changed anything, I don't think. So there you go. That's my one critique, because I gotta point it out. I'll keep pointing it out until people, stop doing this. Because anyway, I'm just there are just as many girls reading shonen manga, watching shonen shows. So it's just it's frustrating, but here we are. Still a great show, still great characters, still highly recommended. I always reach for the best. Like, let's just hold everyone to a super high standard. That's the goal.
You know who's got cool female characters? Jujutsu Kaisen.
Jujutsu Kaisen. All right, Nathan.
1 point.
Touche. 1 point for Nathan on Jujutsu Kaisen. All right. That's true. Yes, that's true. Are there any other moments or episodes that you really love and want to talk about? Good, because that's one of my favorites. I'm sorry, the audio medium. Nathan just slapped his cheeks like Reagan does at the end of season 1 to Mob.
Yeah, so the scene we're talking about, the lead up to this is that there is an evil organization that kind of tries to take over the world at the end of both of the seasons called the Claw. And it has a whole army of espers that are trying to use their powers for evil, and thus the good guys have to defeat them. And so they are in just the absolute trenches of a battle of a huge Esper on Esper. You have Teru, Ritsu, Mob, and Reagan on one side versus like, I don't even know their names, but it's like guy with a sword, person that can control gravity, this huge manipulator, spirit tamer, just like big bad evil people. And Mob is losing control of his emotions. It's going into question mark, question mark, question mark percent. He is
Yeah.
1,000%. It's absolutely going to blow his top. And Teru and Ritsu are kind of like, you need to save us by defeating these people. And Reagan is sitting there like, no, do not hurt. Do not use your psychic powers on another person. You don't need to do this. And Mob is absolutely losing it and losing it and losing it, going insane. And then Reagan just sort of like snaps him out of it and slaps both of his cheeks suddenly. And Mob like looks up at him, and Reagan just goes, "It's okay to run away." and Mob like goes completely back to normal, completely blank. You don't know what's happening at all. Like all of the power that was whirling around him kind of like sucks in, and then the guy with the sword comes up and just slashes the back of Reagan, just completely knocking him down, and then the episode ends. How dare they?
Oh, yes.
You pick back up at the next episode thinking that Mob's in action has essentially gotten his master killed, and Master Reagan just gets up off the ground and looks at the guy with the sword and is like, "You got to be kidding me! This thing was made of plastic." And I'm sitting there thinking, "Oh my gosh, Reagan is actually powerful. His power is that he is negative psychic. None of the psychic abilities work on Reagan. Oh my gosh, it's like the X-Men where this power is actually anti-powers and everyone that comes within reach of him loses their psychic powers. It's amazing. He's so important." And then it wasn't that. It was actually Mob is an empath and can emotionally resonate with everyone around him, and that's why he's such a powerful psychic. And so he actually transferred 1,000% of his psychic power to Reagan. And I was like,
Yes.
my idea was cooler, but I guess this is okay.
Your idea definitely is cooler, to be clear.
Right?
But I'm not going to deny, I still think it's pretty cool that Reagan was able to do it.
Yeah, so essentially Reagan with 1,000% Mob's power goes and just absolutely wrecks the rest of the crew. And Mob gets to hold his peace of not hurting anybody, even though he's like blown up entire schools and knocked people into the stratosphere before. But whatever, Spider-Man doesn't hurt people either, right? Batman doesn't hurt people. He's just breaking their spines, right? All right. But it my opinions aside on that facet of superhero genres, but yeah, I don't know. I thought it would be really. The other thought I had is that because Reagan is a fake psychic, he doesn't really believe in psychics, and so psychic powers are actually all about belief in them. And so if Reagan doesn't believe that they are powerful, then they are not powerful. Was my other idea in the moment, and I was like, that's
Oh.
super interesting. Of that, the psychic powers are only incredibly powerful because the other psychics are believe in each other essentially. But if Reagan doesn't believe and doesn't see the psychic powers, because they're like all swirling with crazy amounts of energy going off of them, but Reagan doesn't see any of that because he isn't a psychic. And so it's like, if you can't see it, you can't believe it. But yeah, and so then like the other thing that's very weird about sometimes is that in the society, the what we are experiencing of all these psychics isn't really a part of the day-to-day life of everyone. Like the psychic abilities is so rare that normal human beings like still don't like there isn't like a My Hero Academia where 80% of the population has, superpowers. There's not any of that going on. It's like there's a telepathy club at the school that are trying to find telepaths and can't, right? Even though
Yeah.
we are experiencing all of these psychic powers and psychic people that are going around like doing crazy things all the time, but this little high school group of like misfits that are like looking for psychics can't find any, and we're like, there's 7 down the street, guys.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's this weird intersection of where like the actual psychic community isn't interacting with the rest of society very much, in at least in a significant way. So that's where that idea of if they don't believe in the psychic abilities, it doesn't actually affect them came into it. Of just like because most of society isn't experiencing this or isn't seeing this, they actually aren't actually being affected by it. And it's just like this weird group of people that do believe in it and think they are all psychics that are experiencing it. But this is me just writing other stories within the stories that I constantly do. And then I get disappointed in the actual story because I go, man, my ideas are way better than everyone else's.
Oh, Nathan, you're ruining it for yourself.
I know.
But yeah, it is also a point to make that in Mob Psycho 100, yeah, the world is still just like doesn't necessarily believe that psychics are real, even though all this stuff is happening. And you have to have a psychic ability to even see the spirits and stuff, just like, um, you know, people would say of real life. So, like, that's pretty. It, like you said, especially with how much crazy stuff is happening in the psychics world, quote unquote, um, it doesn't leak out into normal society very often. Um, except at the end when half the city gets torn down. But
Right, and then replaced by giant broccoli.
I mean, one of the best moments of the show, to be honest, the giant broccoli at the end. Because here's the thing: you have even in the very first opening, you have all this broccoli, and you're like, what is the
Yep.
broccoli for? What is going on? And it just so happens that all of this psychic power gets directed into the broccoli seeds that Mob has been carrying around since season 1 and turns into a giant mushroom cloud that is actually a broccoli.
Episode 1, season 2, when he fights off the plant. But yeah.
It's just gold. I love it. Just the ridiculousness of these things. Oh man, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. The only other moment that we kind of mentioned briefly is that I really do love the moment when Reagan has gotten himself into some really deep trouble. Everyone thinks he is a fake. Like everyone's coming to realize that, I suppose. And he is, has all this press on him, and it's terrible. And Mob hasn't been around, and he realizes that he really just kind of does this job because of Mob, because he is there for him, and Mob is actually a really big part of his life and kind of his only friend, and it's super cute. And Reagan's like, this everything sucks, so I'm just kind of like giving up, holding this press conference. Mob comes and saves the day, basically. And I just love that moment where they're, talking to each other outside, and Mob's like, no, you're a genuinely good person. And it's just so sweet. Dang it. So I really do like that little mini arc in the middle of season 2. It's so sweet. I was like, dang, guys, stop being so nice to each other.
And I was like, come on, guys, you're going to make me like this guy? I don't want to like this guy. Come on.
Yeah. You have to like Reagan.
I do like how that is like a turning point in the show, though, where it's like suddenly Reagan and in turn Dimple are no longer like looking to try and being taking advantage of Mob. And like Mob is coming to his own again, of like, again, with the purpose of like, he thought his purpose was like to be a part-time worker for Reagan and like train with Reagan. And now he's like, no, I know I have a better idea of my purpose of just like being a middle schooler and like having friends and going to karaoke, and like this is what he wants to be doing and not this like constant psychic training. And then when that is interrupted by Claw, he goes absolutely berserk again and kind of loses it. And then even falters within his own self and his purpose of like not being able to convince the head guy that like what he was doing is wrong, and like kind of gives up on him, and is like, again with the empath of like he relates so much to people, and he's like relating to this like very cruel and evil version of himself, and is just like, yeah, no, you're right, like I understand you and I understand the feelings that you have, and we're going to use these feelings and emotions to destroy each other because that's what you want. And then it essentially wrecks half the city until he comes to realize that like, no, you're looking for a friend just like how I was looking for a friend. And then they grow a giant broccoli together.
It's great. It's so good. I love this show. I love everything about this show. I don't think there's one bad episode. I like all of them. I love these characters. I love that it's funny. The animation is amazing, and the characters are just so genuine. And that's what I love about this show.
I'll definitely disagree on the no bad episodes. I think there are some very dragging and non developmental episodes, especially towards the front of both of the seasons.
You just want a leaner season that's a little more focused.
Yeah, I like the stuff with Claw because I love villains with aesthetics and a motif, and you suddenly present 8 levels of villain to me, and they all got scars, and they're called the Scars, and they all got different powers, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I want.
So I hope everyone gives it a try if they haven't already, because you might just find one of your favorite anime. I know I did. So definitely the comedy isn't for everyone, but that's comedy in general. So
Final question: which opening is better?
all right, Nathan, we're doing this. Okay, here we go. Everybody, the second opening is better than the first, and here's why. Uh, the animation is, again, like we said, different, completely different mediums. Even more so because the beginning is 3D modeled, and then it goes into a whole bunch of other stuff. Also, I'm a fan of okay, I want an anime OP to get me psyched, to get me hyped for the episode, right? I'm like, yes, here we go. Season 2 does that way more than opening 1, because opening
Nope,
2,
completely disagree.
for me, I'm like, oh man, you got everyone fighting each other, they're going around the city and the big explosions and all the crazy angles, and then boom, at the end, it's like mob and the gang, and they zoom in real fast, they zoom out. I love it.
Completely disagree. Opening 1, way better. The music just absolutely slaps. It's the best, like, alt emo band drums constantly just baka 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 the whole time. The counting is fantastic. I don't know what it is that just tickles the back of my brain of them just counting all the way up to 100 throughout the whole song, and then when they end on just like the biggest jazz fall 99, and just the whole thing goes up, I'm like, yes, yes, that is what I wanted. I never skipped it a single time, and that's what makes it a perfect, wonderful OP. The visualizations are just psychedelic, blasting and melting the back of my brain the whole time that I can't look away. You're like, oh, look, this one's got all the different forms of animation and an homage to all of the animations that came before it. And I'm like, give me the bright colors, give them to me.
Oh, that's so good. Oh man, I love that for you. It's definitely a lot about the song as well. And you know, as someone who knows more about drums than I do, I don't listen for the drums, man.
The drums are so good in the first opening. I do like the lyricism in the second opening, especially the very clear "your life is your own," which cements the
Yes.
idea of purpose even more. And then most of the lyrics are actually in English, and I didn't realize that until they actually put subtitles on couple of the other, because it's in sort of the Japanese accented English
Hmm.
that happens a lot, where Japanese people will adopt and repronounce English words. Um, and so, yeah, they're just yelling "mob" a lot in
I was
the
gonna say the
second
first one. I'm
opening.
like, okay, the lyrics are literally just mob, mob. What do you want?
Mob,
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 mob.
mob, mob, mob. It's great. They both yell "mob" a lot.
They
Um,
do.
it's because he's important.
He's the main character.
Well,
Uh,
that's the other thing. He's technically one of the nickname is Mobby because he is emotionless, like a background character, and that's why there's a whole emphasis on who is the protagonist. Because Mob
huh.
is definitely not the protagonist. He is part of one of the faces in the mob. He is one of the people in the background when nothing is further from the truth.
Exactly. Exactly.
At least that's what Wikipedia told me when I looked up. Why do they call him Mob?
Well, I think it's because like the kanji for his forename Shigeo can alternatively be read as mob. Uh, so that is why, because the kanji can be read that way. That's the thing with Japanese language that I feel like I see a lot in anime is like I've seen that before with character nicknames or just with other jokes and things that don't connect because I don't know Japanese. Other fun name things though. Reigen Arataka is a pun on Japanese Reigen Arataka, which means strikingly blessed by the gods.
Okay.
So, but although he's obviously not.
I suppose.
Well, excellent final question. Listen to or watch both of the openings. Let us know which opening is your favorite. That would be great, please. We're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at Fanimated Podcast. I have an email address, fanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. You can vote for upcoming episodes and listen to bonus episodes and vlogs and all sorts of other fun things at patreon.com/fanimated. The music is written by Jamie Krause and the art is done by myself. You can find me on Instagram at CandorDraw. And thank you, Nathan, for watching all of Mob Psycho 100 and chatting with me about this great show.
I did it.
You did
Hooray!
it! 100%ed.
I didn't watch the OVA, so 98%.
Valid. Still an A. This is part of the September Spectacular celebration for Fanimated's 3rd anniversary. So we are going to be back next week with another brand new episode. So until then, stay tuned.
And stay animated.
Like everyone, even though they have faults, everyone has faults. Reigen is just, a compulsive liar.